Hello everybody, let me tell you a new story today. Today's story comes from Zheng, who lives and works in a northern city in China. He didn't specify exactly where. On Saturday, November 11th, 2017, Zheng was resting at home when the phone rang. He initially thought it was his boss from work, but when he checked his phone, he saw it was his cousin calling. Zheng hadn't seen his cousin in a long time, and his cousin had been living and working in Shanghai. When he answered the call, his cousin asked, "Zheng, guess who I saw today?" Zheng was puzzled and didn't know how to respond. His cousin continued, "I'm on a business trip in Beijing. I saw Dabiao's parents at a Beijing railway station." Zheng's heart skipped a beat as he asked, "Dabiao's parents? How's Dabiao doing now?" His cousin paused for a few seconds and said, "Dabiao is gone." Zheng asked, "What do you mean by gone?" His cousin explained. He had been in a coma for over 10 years, and his condition suddenly worsened a few days ago. He couldn't be saved and passed away on the day of winter solstice. Zheng was in shock and didn't know what to say. His cousin continued, "Well, for Dabiao, it's a kind of a relief. He was cremated in Beijing, and his parents took his ashes back to their hometown. I'll find out where his grave is in a few days, and we should go visit him." Zheng agreed. Zheng's original good mood had now turned sour. Who was Dabiao, everybody, and what had happened to him? Let me tell you the story. Zheng and his cousin had grown up together, attending the same elementary school, middle school, and high schools. His cousin had gone to university in Shanghai and had been working there ever since, only returning during the Spring Festival. In 2003, over 20 years ago, when Zheng and his cousin both graduated from elementary school and were admitted to the same junior high school, they had nothing much to do during the summer vacation and no summer homework. So they decided to go to their new school to play basketball and familiarize themselves with the environment there. One day at noon, after lunch, they took their basketball and went to the school. The security guard at the entrance understood their situation and did not stop them. They entered the school and saw a row of basketball courts on the right and an old 3-story teaching building on the left. Directly in front of the school gate was a 4-floor teaching building under construction, with many workers painting the exterior walls. It seemed that this new building could be put into use at the start of the new semester. The two were very happy because they would have a new teaching building when they started middle school. They went to the playground to play basketball. After a while, another young man joined them. He was wearing a white t-shirt and jeans shorts. He was about 1.7 meters tall. He had an oval face, a high-nose bridge, and looked very energetic. He politely asked to join their game. Dabiao played basketball very well and was quite strong. Soon, Zheng, his cousin, and Dabiao became good friends. Yes, the new young man was Dabiao. After playing for over an hour, the 3 young men sat down to chat. Zheng mentioned the new teaching building at the school, and Dabiao laughed, saying that his father was the contractor for this project. Zheng said, "Wow, your dad is amazing. A contractor. In those days, such a boss was considered a big shot." Later, Zheng learned that Dabiao's parents were from a nearby town, originally farmers. Dabiao's father had started working on construction projects for others and had only begun contracting building projects in recent years. W's mother managed the account and their family was quite well off. W had come to see his parents, but they didn't allow him to stay at the construction site, so he had been wandering around the school area when he saw Zheng and his cousin playing basketball. For the rest of summer vacation, Zheng and his cousin often came to this basket court, and W was almost over there. Quickly, the three young men became very close friends. W had a very good temper and was very down-to-earth. Soon, September arrived. The summer vacation ended, and the new school year began. Zheng and his classmates used the new teaching building. The first grade was on the first floor, the second grade on the second floor, and the third grade on the third floor. Each floor had 8 classrooms, 4 on each side. The fourth floor consisted of activity rooms, a ping-pong room, a music classroom, and a storage room. Zheng, his cousin, and W were all placed in the same class, Class 8, which was located at the far west end of the building. W being tall, so he sat in the back of the classroom, while Zheng and his cousin sat in the middle. The three of them attended classes together, ate together, played basketball together, and hung out together. They were inseparable best friends. Time flew by, and they were about to enter their 3rd year of junior high school. However, during the summer vacation, a short circuit in classroom 308 caused a fire that damaged the facilities inside. Fortunately, the fire was quickly extinguished, but the classroom needed to be renovated. As a result, Class 8 of the 3rd grade was moved to the upper classroom, Classroom 408. This series of coincidences ultimately led to the eerie tragedy that followed. On the first day of the new term, the entire class was notified to move to Classroom 408. The 4th floor housed only Zheng's class, making it very quiet. Moreover, Zheng remembered feeling a shiver when he first entered Classroom 408. Why was this room so cold? It was still September and the weather was somewhat warm, even hot, right? But Classroom 408 was quite cool, almost chilly. It was next to the staircase on the west side, so whenever there was a break, Zheng would immediately go downstairs to bask in the sun. He really disliked this cold classroom. Soon, Zheng and his cousin noticed a problem. Ever since the start of the new term, W seemed much lazier and in low spirits. He often sat in a last row by the window, staring blankly. Occasionally, when Zheng looked back, he would see W dozing off. After class, he would just lie face down on his desk, unresponsive even when called, and he wouldn't join them for basketball. He seemed very listless. One day at lunch, Zheng asked W, "Hey, what's been going on with you lately? Have you been going to the internet cafes at night?" W replied, "I don't know. Ever since school started, I've had a headache at the back of my head. I'm always tired. I cannot sleep well. I feel groggy all the time." His cousin said, "Then you should get some exercise. You never join us for basketball anymore." By June 2006, the middle school exams were approaching and everyone was studying hard. However, W still dozed off in class and slept on his desk during breaks. He kept saying that sitting in a classroom made his head hurt and he couldn't focus on studying. The teachers had talked to him several times, but it was useless. Zheng even joked with Dabiao. Dabiao, if you don't want to study, that's fine. Just go into construction business with your dad and make money. Don't forget about me when you are rich. Dabiao just looked at Zheng without saying anything. Zheng noticed that Dabiao's dark circle under his eyes were very pronounced, and the once cheerful young man seemed to have vanished. On a Monday, 1 week before the middle school exam in July, everyone returned to school to continue preparing for the exams. Zheng noticed that Dabiao did not come to school. In 2006, even some adults didn't have mobile phones, let alone these middle school students. Zheng didn't know how to contact Dabiao, nor did his cousin. It was strange. Even if Dabiao didn't plan to go to high school or take the middle school final exams, he should have said goodbye to Zheng and his cousin. Dabiao just disappeared without a trace. After the middle school exams came the 2 months summer vacation again. One day during the vacation after lunch, Zheng's cousin came to find Zheng and suggested they go back to their junior high school to play basketball. Zheng said, "It's going to rain. Let's not go." His cousin replied, "It's okay. It's cool on cloudy days." In the end, they still went back to their junior high school. They played for a while, but the weather became increasingly gloomy. It was 1:30 in the afternoon, but it felt like a night was falling. The entire school was enveloped in dark clouds. As the two were about to leave, it started to rain, with large raindrops falling at first, quickly turning into a downpour. They had no choice but to run to the teaching building to take shelter. On their way to the building, Zheng looked up at their classroom, room 408, and saw a figure inside. He said to his cousin, "There's someone in our classroom. Let's go see who it is." Without hesitation, they ran up to the 4th floor, holding their basketball, and reached the back door of classroom 408. His cousin was in front, but suddenly stopped and asked Zheng, "Do you see what that is?" Zheng looked through the windows of the back door into the classroom and saw something he would never forget for the rest of his life. He saw a person hanging in midair at the back of the classroom, swaying back and forth. The position was right above Dabiao's seat. Someone had committed suicide by hanging in a classroom. The 2 junior high school students were completely stunned. Suddenly, a loud clap and sounder was followed by a gust of wind that blew open all the doors and windows of the classroom. Now, Zheng and his cousin could see more clearly. Yes, there was a person hanging at the back of the classroom, and with the strong wind, the body kept swaying as if it had come back to life. The 2 young boys had never seen anything like this. Zheng shouted, dropped the basketball, and dragged his cousin down the stairs, almost trembling all the way down, and then ran out to the school gate. The security guard shouted at them, "What's wrong with you? Don't fall." Zheng and his cousin ran home in the rain. Due to the rain and the shock, they both fell ill as soon as they got home and lay in bed for almost 10 days before recovering. However, during these days of resting at home, they had not heard any news about a suicide at their junior high school. If someone had really committed suicide, it would have been explosive news in a small town. How could no one talk about it? Zheng and his cousin did not tell their families about this incident. When they met again after recovering, the more they discussed it, the more they felt that something was off and eerie about the whole situation. Eventually, Zheng and his cousin agreed that they would not talk to anyone about this incident. However, a few days later, on August 7th, 2006, during the family gathering, their terrifying memories were brought back. It was the day before the Ghost Festival, and Zheng's relatives had come to his house to prepare the ancestral worship the next day. The men were in the living room preparing some offerings, while the women were in the bedroom folding paper money, paper ingots. Zheng and his cousin were also helping in the bedroom. As the women chatted, one of the aunts said, while folding the ingots, she said, "People should not do bad deeds. You never know when retribution will come. It may not happen to you, but it could happen to your family. A few days ago, I visited a friend, and her neighbor had a tragedy. The man was a contractor, very wealthy, and his family had built the junior high school in our town. During the construction, a fatal accident occurred on site, and a young man in his 20s died. The contractor bribed some people to cover up the incident and secretly buried the young man's body. His mother came looking for him. The poor old lady had only one son and had been a widow for many years. When her son disappeared, she went to the construction site to search for him and even filed complaints, but all in vain. In the end, the old lady hung herself with her scarf in an unfinished room on the top floor of the building. The old lady died a miserable death. Her body hung there, swaying in the wind. Recently, the contractor's son was sleeping at home when he suddenly had a cerebral hemorrhage and fell into a coma. He was very young, and there was no apparent reason for the hemorrhage. When he was taken to the hospital, the doctor said that the symptoms indicated that he had been kicked. Isn't that strange? Who would kick his head while he was sleeping at home? Upon hearing this story, Zheng looked at his cousin, and his cousin looked back at him. This was clearly about Dabiao. Dabiao's father was a contractor who had built a new teaching building at the school. Dabiao had missed school the week before the exams because he had fell into a coma. On that rainy summer day, what Zheng and his cousin had seen in classroom 408 was the old lady who had hung herself. Her ghost had been there, constantly kicking the back of Dabiao's head. My goodness. When Zheng realized this, his face turned pale, and so did his cousins. The next day, the entire family went to pay respects to their ancestors. This time, Zheng and his cousin were extremely devout, hoping that their ancestors would protect them. Later, they asked the aunt for Dabiao's address and went to visit him. When they arrived, they found no one at home. Upon asking the neighbors, they learned that Dabiao had been in the ICU at the hospital all alone. They rushed to the hospital, but the ICU was off limits. They could only look through the windows at their former good friend and brother, lying unconscious in bed. Zheng and his cousin were both very saddened. In the following year, Zheng and his cousin often visit Dabiao, and in doing so, they became acquainted with Dabiao's parents. Unfortunately, Dabiao remained in a coma The doctor tried many methods, but none were effective. When Zheng was a sophomore in high school, he heard that Dabiao's parents had taken him to a major hospital in Beijing, and then they lost contact. On 11th November, when Zheng received a call from his cousin about Dabiao's passing, he was reminded of these past events. After hanging up the phone, Zheng felt a deep sense of reflection. He thought to himself, in this life, one really must not do anything with a guilty conscience, regardless of whether there are ghosts or deities. At least when accidents happen, you won't be left regretting and thinking that retribution has come. That night, he tossed and turned, unable to sleep, with memories of times he spent with Dabiao in school flooding his mind, including that rainy afternoon when he saw the terrifying scene outside classroom 408. It kept replaying in his mind over and over again. The next day was Sunday. After getting up, Zheng felt very disturbed. He decided to go back to his former junior high school to take one last look. It had been years since he had been there, and he thought it would be a good way to pay tribute to his good friend Dabiao. He didn't even have breakfast and drove straight to school. Since he left early, there were few people and cars on the road, and he arrived at the junior high school quickly. After getting out of the car, he noticed that the new 4-floor teaching building from their school days had already become a pile of ruins. It looked like it had just been demolished, with many workers wearing yellow safety helmets nearby. On the left side, a new building had already been constructed. Zheng was surprised that the school had changed so much over the years. He muttered to himself, "Why did they demolish it?" At that moment, he suddenly heard someone speaking beside him. It was demolished on winter solstice, starting from the west side. The sentence came without warning. He was startled and looked up to see an old lady standing on his left. He hadn't noticed when she had arrived. The old lady had her hands tucked into her sleeves, was stooped, and was wearing an extremely outdated and tattered black cotton padded jacket. She had a large red scarf wrapped around her neck, covering her forehead, nose, and mouth, revealing only her eyes. Zheng felt very uneasy inside. He didn't speak to the old lady but glanced at her and then focused his attention back on the ruins of the old building. The old lady spoke again. "It's good that it's demolished. It's good. I can leave now. You can all leave. We're even." The words, "we're even," struck Zheng like a flash in his mind. He quickly turned his head towards the old lady, but she had already started walking away. He wanted to call out to her and ask her what she meant by that. But when he opened his mouth to shout, it felt as if his throat had been glued shut, and he couldn't make a sound. He watched as the old lady walked step by step, with the red scarf on his head. Suddenly, he felt dizzy and almost fell over. When he steadied himself and looked up again, the old lady had vanished. But Zheng still remembered the two sentences she had said. It was demolished on a winter solstice, starting from the west side. Dabiao had passed away on winter solstice. It's good that is demolished. It's good. I can leave now. You can all leave. Now we're even. Who was she? Was she talking about Dabiao? Could it be that the mother of the deceased worker had not died? Or Perhaps she had died, but her ghost had lingered all these years, waiting for the building to be demolished and Dario to pass away before she could finally leave this world in peace. So everybody, this is the end of the story. Please share what you think of this story and your stories. Thank you, everybody. This is Alex's Story Time, and I am Alex. I got a lot of good stories to share with you all. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next time.